Whether you're picking and grinning or just grinning, grab a drink, pull up a seat. It's time for Roots Music Rambler. Turn it up.
Hey, so how was that whole Willie Nelson, Bob Dylan, like almost dead guys show?
Yeah, they worried me. John Mellencamp was prancing around the stage like he was 32 instead of 72 or whatever the hell he is.
Is he really that old?
He's 70. I think he's 74, actually. Yeah, he's up there. He just had a birthday too. But yeah, he was good. We got there a little late. There was an opener. Southern Avenue opened up and I missed them, but I was actually rushing from Louisville with my mom, who had to meet me at a certain time so we could get there on time. So just a bunch of dominoes fell and we just didn't get there for the opener. Oh. But we got there for about half of John Cougar Mellencamp, which was great. And, we heard a bunch of the songs that, we expected to hear. And he was really good. But yeah, he was dancing around on stage. And I'm like, dude, you need to not do that because you're going to break a hip or some shit. And then Dylan came out and I was severely disappointed in Bob Dylan. First of all, he played piano from sheet music. He did not play his guitar. The piano was sat back sort of in the middle of the stage, not out on the lip. And we were sitting far to the one side at Riverbend, which is limited view anyway. When you buy the tickets, they tell you you're going to have a limited view. You need to understand this. But as long as the performer is kind of out on the precipice of the stage, you're okay. And John Cougar Mellencamp was out there. Willie later came out. He set up out where we could see him pretty good. I could only see the tuft of Dylan's hair leaning over the sheet music is where the cutoff was, where I could see. So I couldn't see him well. The combination of the angle and his voice, which is terrible, and I'm sorry, Bob Dylan has a terrible singing voice. The mixture of the two things, I couldn't really understand what he was saying. Yeah. I mean, I probably wasn't going to understand what he was saying anyway, but I mean, I've heard a bunch of his songs. I know a bunch of his songs. Never been a huge Dylan fan. I love the songwriting. The lyrics are great.
Right.
But as a performer, he's not a performer. He's a songwriter, and he doesn't give two shits about whether or not the audience has a good time, I don't think. So it was hard to hear him. I couldn't really see him. I did get up at one point and walk around a little bit so that I could get a good, look at him and whatnot, a couple pictures. But he read from sheet music and played the piano all night. And I think he only played 2 or 3 songs that I even recognized.
Oh.
It was just a very strange Dylan experience. I'm glad I got to see him. He's a legend, obviously. I'm glad I got to see him. It was the first time I'd ever seen him. But I definitely feel like there could have been a lot of things that went differently for me to like it a lot better. I was disappointed.
Yeah.
And then Willie came out and made up for all of it.
Oh, perfect.
Because he was fantastic. I mean, Willie he just comes out and sits and plays, but he still plays, and he plays well. And he sounded as good as you can sound if you're 91 years old. But yeah, he sounded like Willie, and the band around him was great. A couple of the band members are recognizable, legendary people. And his harmonica player, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, Wayne or something like that, was there, and he was great. He came out and actually played with Dylan one song.
Oh.
And he played a bunch of the stuff that you want him to play. He certainly can't play his whole catalog because we'd been there 3 weeks, but he played all the stuff you'd want him to play. And then Southern Avenue came out at the end and did a couple songs with him kind of as an encore. And it was fantastic. I took my mom. She loved it, had a great time. We had a nice time together. So yeah, it was a good experience. I'm glad I got to see Willie. I'm glad I got to see Dylan, even though I didn't think he was all that impressive. Right. I'm glad I got to see John Cougar Mellencamp, which, somebody that is kind of a voice of the fabric of our growing up. So it was kind of cool to see him, even though I've never been a huge fan of his. I've never disliked him, but his songs come on the radio. I'm like, oh yeah, Jack and Diane, sweet, cool. So it was good. I had a good time, and I think Mom had a good time too. She enjoyed seeing those legends that she likes so much as well. So that was fun.
Well, it sounds like you had a very nice time. If anything, like you said, you got to spend time with Mom and experience it together. And anytime anyone talks about John Cougar Mellencamp, I mean, I've never been a big fan, even in the 80s. Like, his music just didn't do it for me. I'm not taking anything away from the man. There's no denying the imprint he's left on American music. But
Sure.
I can't talk or think about John Cougar Mellencamp without hearing the line from the Bottle Rocket song Indianapolis.
Yes.
I'll puke if that jukebox plays John Cougar one more time.
Yeah.
Because the first time I ever heard that song and that line, that, I heard that line, I was like, yes, somebody gets me, and the rest is history. The rest is my history with the Bottle Rockets.
Yeah. I didn't see him play, but I saw John Mellencamp and Meg Ryan at an Indianapolis University basketball game once.
Oh, were they together?
And they were dating at the time. And it was funny because his seats at the basketball arena are in the lower section, which is kind of walled off from the upper sections. When I say lower section, I mean, there's 6 rows of bleachers on the floor behind the bench. Okay. So it's like VIP area. And his seats are on the very back row, and the wall behind him is tall enough that people behind him can't get to him. And you have to climb up the bleachers to get to him. So he's isolated. You can't get to him. I happen to have good seats because a friend of mine took me and had season tickets. And we walked in, and he was probably, 6 or 8 feet from me. And he and Meg Ryan are just sitting there waiting on the ball game to start. So I got to see him once upon a time. But the John Mellencamp memory that I have that I always refer to, and this is one of the reasons why I've always liked him, even though I never was a huge fan of his music. When Pink Houses came out, that was when MTV was really just starting to blow up.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously he was smart and taking advantage of the video era to win over fans. They did a giveaway for a pink house. They were giving away a house. And the promo of that thing, this was probably 84, 85, something like that. The promo of that was he was standing there and goes, hey, man, enter the contest. And if you win the house, I'll paint the mother pink. And for some reason, that line always stuck with me. We'll paint the mother pink. And,
boy.
I've just always, I've always had a, soft spot in my heart for him, I guess, just because I thought he was cool.
Yeah.
And his music's, good. I don't turn him off, but
I do.
Never was a big follower, though.
All right.
There you go.
Paint the mother pink. I do remember that. I'm a product of the MTV generation. So
exactly. We're painting the mother pink on Roots Music Rambler. She's Frank.
And he's Falls wearing a pink shirt.
And we're rambling on through, this is fuchsia, by the way. And we're rambling on through the stories behind the music we love.
And today on the show, we are going deeper into bluegrass than we have in a while. Dave Adkins is our guest. For those of you who pay attention to the bluegrass charts, you've likely seen his name a number of times over the years. He was nominated for Male Vocalist of the Year by one organization in 2022 and has charted songs on the folk and bluegrass charts for a decade or more.
Yeah, and coincidentally enough, Dave is a fellow Pikeville, Kentucky product. He hails from Elkhorn City, Kentucky, which is where Larry and Cheryl Webster, our guests from a few episodes back, are from. In fact, I'll have to verify this with Dave, but I believe one of the first paying gigs that he ever had was technically in front of my house in Pikeville when I was growing up. It's a long story that involves a parade route, and we'll dig into more of that in the interview.
I can't wait. That sounds fun. But Dave does have a new album out called What I'm For. The album's in the top 10 of the Bluegrass Unlimited chart the week we're recording this interview. So we'll talk about the new album, new music, and all about his journey to his current success on this week's episode.
Also on the show, we're going to do our normal Pickin the Grinnin segment, share our picks for whose music is making us grin. They might be new artists, might be old, but they'll sure be good. Before we kick it all off, though, Frank, tell me about the Evanston Folk Festival. I saw you rubbing shoulders with some pretty notable people up there recently.
Yes, it was such a fantastic experience, fantastic festival. For those folks who don't know Evanston, it is a town just to the north of Chicago, right on Lake Michigan. It's home to Northwestern University. So that's how most people outside of the area know Evanston. It's such a cool town. When I was younger, I always said, I want to live there, gorgeous old historic homes, the whole thing. So to have a folk festival there, it worked, right? And it was set up right on the lakefront in Dawes Park. And it was so well run and well organized and well attended, but it wasn't obnoxious. It wasn't packed. It was probably the tamest music festival I've ever attended. And I mean, I guess because, that's the nature of it, right? It's a folk festival. But some of the artists were a little, bigger names and maybe a little bit more of the troublemaker variety. But still, everything went so well. And yes, one of the things I love about festivals like this, even like the American Music Festival at Fitzgerald's that I went to over the summer, is it's such an intimate setting, like the whole ordeal, that often the artists themselves are taking in other artists' sets and mingling with the fans. And that's exactly how I got to rub shoulders with so many of them. Rub shoulders, as you said, got to hang out a little bit with Adeem the Artist, and that was really cool. Oh, we ran into Robbie Fulks. And if you don't know Robbie Fulks, he's kind of a legendary figure in the Chicago country folk Americana scene. He doesn't live in Chicago anymore. He's out in California, but I saw him like at least a half dozen times back in the 90s. And I told him that, and he's like, what? That was almost 30 years ago. He's like, were you in the womb? And I'm like, no, Robbie, I'm actually older than I look. So thank you. But yeah, so it was cool talking to him. And who else? Oh, we got to be kind of close to Sierra Farrell, but didn't talk to her or meet her or anything. But that was cool because she is like, I don't know, she's just this whole presence, right?
She's an event in and of herself.
Exactly. With the big dress. And then she had these braids that were like they looked like giant, like an outline of giant Mickey Mouse ears. And then she was walking around with her little dog. And I mean, it was really cool. But yeah, it was so great. And I'm assuming that Evanston Folk Fest is going to happen again next year. And I hope it is run just as well and that I get to go again and that it doesn't get much bigger because it really was enjoyable and it felt very intimate. And yeah, it was just a really great experience.
Very cool. So a couple of follow-ups. Adeem the Artist, I'm actually seeing tonight here in Louisville.
Oh, that's right.
So I'm going to see them tonight at the Monarch. And Robbie Fulks, little tie-in here, I was at the Monarch last night as we record this to see Dallas Wayne, who a lot of people are familiar with his music. He co-writes with Robbie Fulks quite a bit, or has over the course of his career, did several songs that they co-wrote last night. And Dallas Wayne, if you're kind of confused as to maybe what that name is, he is a host of Willie's Roadhouse and Outlaw Country on Sirius XM. So he's not just a radio host, he's also a musician. And talked to him a little bit last night. He was telling me some Billy Joe Shaver stories, which were really funny. But I'm going to try to get him on the show so we can get Dallas Wayne on here to talk about his music and then his life and times of being on the road and opening up with and recording with Willie and Billy Joe and all these other, legends in the country music world. And of course, as a radio show host, he's interviewed a lot of people, talked to a lot of people, traveled the world. So fascinating guy. I'd love to have him on the show. So we touched base last night about that too. But yeah, he co-wrote some songs with Robbie Fulks, talked a little bit about him last night. So cool.
How fun. See, it all comes full circle. It's all connected.
Yeah.
It's such a little world that we, inhabit here in the Americana bluegrass.
It is interestingly a small world. It's just funny. And it's kind of funny. I was talking to Oliver, who opened this. Oliver, I'm forgetting his last name off the top of my head. Met him last night. He opened at the Monarch for Dallas. And he was telling me about these people that he knew. And it took us about 30 seconds to go, oh, yeah, I know that gal because she knows Ella Webster, who's in Cole Chaney's band. And this person opened up for them. And I mean, we were just connecting all these dots. It's really strange how small of a world the Americana space really can be if you're kind of zeroing in on either a geography or, just a group of people who you know. So it's a fun place to hang out and tell a story. I'm really looking forward to seeing Adeem tonight.
I did talk with Adeem about having them on the show. And they said, they're like, I'm a little forgetful and I got a lot of stuff going on. So if you don't hear from me by Thanksgiving, reach out. So if you get to talk to Adeem, maybe offer a reminder.
I will. In fact, Mark at the Monarch has been generous and kind enough to let us put out our stickers on the tables and and the bar
Love
area
it.
there. So I will visually remind Adeem, remember holding this sticker up in Evanston? That was my co-host. And so I'm here to remind you, we're going to get you on the show. So
There we go. Love it.
good stuff. Very good. Well, we are sipping on a bourbon and I am out. So that's an emergency. We're going to take a quick break for a refill. Take a moment, if you will, and listen to more about the awesome sponsors that help make the show happen, including Muskox Flannels. It's getting close to cool time out there. It is cool time for some of you folks up north. You're going to need some new flannels. So if you go to gomuskox.com/Rambler and use the code Rambler, you get a discount. Any purchase above $100, they give $10 for wildlife preservation. Can't go wrong. These things are buttery soft and built like a tank, just like me. Gomuskox.com/Rambler. Use the code Rambler. Get a discount. When we come back, we're rolling back home to Pike County with bluegrass artist Dave Adkins. Stay tuned. This is Roots Music Rambler. Hey, gang, I was not a flannel guy until I found Muskox flannels. Now, I don't want to wear anything else. Well, I mean, pants, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so Muskox is a premium flannel shirt that comes in various colors and styles, but also all season or heavy. So they have different weights and thicknesses. They even have sizes that fit big boys like me. Now, Frank, I hear the ladies like the flannel look. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
So one Muskox flannels customer actually said they are buttery soft, but built like a tank. I resemble that remark, especially when I'm wearing my Muskox flannels. They also, by the way, give $10 of every $100 order to support wildlife conservation. So you're doing some good for the earth and the animals on it with every purchase. Visit gomuskox.com/Rambler, browse the collection and get you some buttery soft, built like a tank premium flannels. Make sure you use the code Rambler, all caps, and get the discount on your order. That's gomuskox.com/Rambler. Use the code Rambler, buttery soft, yo. That might be my new hashtag.
I'm for wildflowers in the window, mechanics you can trust. I'm for crackers in my chili and leaving grudges in the dust. I'm for drive-through order takers who can muster up a smile. I'm for letting Walmart greeters sit down for a while. I'm for turning off the TV, getting off the internet. I'm for learning all the words to the Gettysburg Address. I'm for dusty pawn shop guitars and boxers past their prime. I'm for soaking up the wisdom when an old man speaks his mind. I'm for laid off factory workers when the wolf is at the door. You don't have to guess what I'm against if you know what I'm for.
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. That song is What I'm For. It's the title track to the new album of the same name by Dave Adkins. He's been a mainstay on the bluegrass charts for over a decade and just keeps rolling out hit record after hit record. He's here with us on Roots Music Rambler. Dave, it's been a good while, man. How are you?
Hey, buddy. How are you, Jason? I'm good, man. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. All right. So just so people understand the context here, Dave and I have at least known of each other for a really long time. We're both from Pikeville, Kentucky. We'll talk about some of our sort of common path crossings as we go along.
Right.
But Dave, I need help clarifying some details about how I came to know who you are. The story goes that my mother helped hire you and one of your first bands to play on a parade float in the Hillbilly Days parade in Pikeville, Kentucky, when you were still in high school. And from what I'm told, correct me here because I may be wrong, that might have been one of your first paying gigs. Is that right?
It was, man, we were barely teenagers at that time. It's been a long time ago. But yeah, I love your mom. She's been so good to me.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, it was a Hillbilly Days parade float for Happy Mart, which was the old convenience stores back in Pike County. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. My mom was a manager of one of those stores for like 9 years. I did a lot of stuff with her, and there was a lot of fun stuff, man. I mean, we got to ride a float in a parade, and, Hillbilly Days is always fun, but that parade's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Well, and the reason that's my recollection of where I first came to know who you were is the parade floats lined up in front of my house. So I was literally watching you guys, get warmed up and whatnot from my front yard. I was just sitting there watching, and I'm like, who's this band on the Happy Mart float?
Who's these hippies?
Exactly. I'm not sure what year that was, but it had to have been when I was in high school, probably. So that would have been.
Oh, yeah. It had to be the late 80s.
Yep. Probably 87, 88, somewhere right in there.
Yeah.
So that's just funny. Take us back to those early days of gigging. When did you actually start playing music seriously, and kind of take us from there to maybe the first album or two?
Man, I got my first guitar when I was 8, and I learned a few chords, and I knew right then that I wasn't going to be a Chet Atkins or anything. So I was like, well, you better work on something else. But I always loved to sing, and that band that you're talking about, Kevin Prater, he still plays on the circuit and travels and does really good. But me and him and Rick Adams and Kelly Belcher started a little band, man, 7th grade, I think we were. And so, when we got to be in high school, we wasn't too awful bad. I mean, we went on to play, like, we was at Dollywood for 3 years and all this stuff. But, by the time we got in high school, everybody was hiring us out to do floats and parades and weddings. And I mean, it's all kinds of stuff. But I mean, that's where it all started from, man. I love bluegrass and, that old country stuff, which I like new country too, but I just always loved bluegrass, and that got me started. And, here I am, 50 years later still, or 42 years later. Whoo.
Yeah. Not quite 50, not quite 50.
So, Dave, you mentioned that you got your first guitar when you were 8. Is that when you actually started playing?
It is. And I just remember hating it so bad because my fingers were bleeding and they were sore, and my dad was making me practice. And I was like, This ain't what I signed up for. What is wrong? But, once you get the calluses and then you start making some enjoyable noise, it's all worth it.
Yeah, that's true.
I like that. Enjoyable noise. So you are now known for your voice as much as your playing. When did you know that you had a voice? And when maybe did you think, I want to do this for real?
I always wanted to sing. I loved to sing, and I always knew that somehow I wanted to be part of what I was doing. Choir was great. I loved my choir teacher. Miss Cooley was wonderful. And I think I was in 6th grade, and we were doing a choir thing, and we were all singing, and she's like, wait a minute. And she told so many to stop, and all right. And when she finally got to me, and she gave me a solo every year after that, and she was really a big push to me, telling me to follow it. And she thought I had something special, and that meant a lot,
Sure.
So that kind of pat on the back. And my family is always, of course, they thought I was Elvis, but I just don't look good in the cape, man.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't go with the rhinestone jumpsuits. That's not a great look for really anybody. So,
Jason, you'd still love me. It's okay.
That's true. We would have. So you obviously, we grew up in a place rich in bluegrass and mountain influences, but I also know we grew up about the same time in that place. And I know we grew up in the era of like hair bands, and there was all sorts of the 90s country things started to come in. There were all sorts of different influences. Was there ever a temptation on your side to play outside of that sort of bluegrass genre?
Man, I got out of it for quite a while. I went to Nashville, and, I had some fun down there, and I did pretty good. And I got signed to a major label, and it kind of went south, but it was a great experience. And then I went to Chicago for a while and sang in a rock band and, like Cubby Bears and all them places and sang in country bands. I just wanted to stretch my feet and see what I could fit. And of course, gospel. I love singing gospel. So I do a lot of that. But, I've tried to cover all of it. I don't know. I just ain't got that opera thing. But anything else, I'll try at least once.
So I have to ask, I'm from Chicago and I'm still living here. So what band did you play with in Chicago? And you mentioned the Cubby Bear. Were there other places you played?
I played with a band called Friction. Now this has been, oh my gosh, I've been married 17 years. So this has been 25, years ago. Mm-hmm. But like we would play that Walter Payton Steakhouse thing that had the big fire pit in the middle on this patio thing. We would play there, and we used to open for a band called Modern Day Romeos a bunch.
Okay.
But right. Yeah, I loved it up there. They flew me up every weekend to play with them, and then they'd fly me back home, and then they was like, man, just come up here and live. So I lived over in Antioch for almost 2 years.
Oh, wow. That's kind of a hike from the city, but it's nice up there. Lots of lakes.
It is. It's really pretty. Just big, huge spiders.
All right. We won't talk about that anymore.
Okay.
No more spiders.
Oh, my goodness. And then also you were a country music DJ, right? How did that experience, did it inform your later writing or performing at all?
I listened to a lot of music, and being a DJ was just, it was great because you just had an unlimited, back then we're talking about, you didn't have all the sources that you got now. I mean, there's literally nothing you can't find at the end of your fingertips in your phone, any music. And back then, if you didn't buy it, you heard it on the radio and that was it.
Right.
So to me, being a DJ for those 3-4 years, it just gave me a wide open to so much music. I mean, it was just a nonstop listen to so many things. Like I would put something on my station, then go and listen to other stuff in another station, but it was just great. It was a lot of fun.
And the disc jockey thing is one of those paths crossed kind of things for us, because my first job was at the very same radio station, WDHR in Pikeville, Kentucky. I believe I preceded you by a few years. When did you work there?
Oh my gosh, 95, maybe 94, somewhere in there.
You came in after I left to go to college, because I graduated in 91 and went off to college. So I would have been at Morehead State about the time you were at the radio station. But,
okay, yeah.
And I will take credit for one thing. Before I left WDHR, I actually worked at WLSI for a while as well. But before I left, I organized the record library. So if you went back in the hallway and back in the little cubby hole, I was the one who put all that stuff in order.
That was impressive. And we used to give you high praise and never knew you did that.
Yeah, I was 15 years old, and they said, okay, we needed an extra task for you. Go organize the record library. I was like, okay, fine. And so that's what I did. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, so my first stint, they had me as the overnight DJ. So I was Brave Dave Adkins, the original Midnight Cowboy.
Oh, wow.
I love it. Yeah, we had some leeway there at the old radio station. It was owned by, for those people who know anything about broadcasting out there, it was owned by Walter May, the late great Walter May. Absolutely. He was president of the National Association of Broadcasters at some time in his career, but some assortment of his daughters ran the radio station. It was either Cindy or Melody. I worked for Melody primarily, and then Cindy kind of came in, I think probably by the time you got there. Cindy still runs it now to this day. They're a lot bigger now, but we had a lot of leeway, because at one point from 9 to midnight over on the AM station on WPKE, I hosted a show called Friday Night on the Rocks, and they let me play rock and roll music that they didn't play on the normal adult contemporary rotation. I played a lot of hair bands back then.
That's awesome, though.
But I actually had a nickname too, but I didn't go on as Jason Falls. I went on as JJ Jam. So there you go.
How can you not love it?
It's just fun small town radio stories, man. It's good.
We grew
good
up
stuff.
with WPKE in Cincinnati. I mean, we had to have, Johnny Fever and all those killer names. We had to have something, right?
Exactly.
My
goodness.
Jam.
Well, Dave used to send it to break, but it's my turn again. We're talking to Dave Adkins, whose new album, What I'm For, is climbing the Bluegrass charts as we speak. Let's go to break with a great cut from that album. This is I'm Ready for the Weekend. He's Dave Adkins. This is Roots Music Rambler.
Time to let the good times begin. I'm ready for the weekend. We'll have some drinks and barbecue. Get my guitar, sing a song or two. What happens next? Well, it all depends. Yeah, I'm ready for the weekend. When Friday morning came around, my mind was already out of town. The boss yelled at me most of the day. Should have quit and just walked away. What he needs, well, I better not say.
Oi, pessoal, olha só a novidade.
Glinda e Elphaba saíram dos palcos da Broadway direto pras telonas.
Wicked ganhou uma adaptação cinematográfica de tirar o fôlego e você não pode ficar fora dessa.
Com as atuações de Ariana Grande e Cíntia Erivo e as vozes de Mira Ruiz e Fabi Bang.
Assista o Wicked a partir do dia 21 de novembro nos cinemas.
Verifique a classificação indicativa.
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. Y'all know I'm a sucker for a good cross-genre cover. That's Dave Adkins' take on the old Creedence song, Bad Moon Rising. I love that. Dave is with us on Roots Music Rambler this week. Let's talk about those influences, Dave. Obviously, you got a little John Fogerty song there on this album. What other acts or songwriters or sounds influenced how you write and perform these days?
Man, growing up, my grandfather was my best friend. And my God, I miss him so bad still. But when I was home, they was within walking distance of me. And he had worked underground for 48 years. So he was deaf. He couldn't hear thunder. And I spent most of my time with him. Even when I got older, I just wanted to be with my papa. And I would say he had this old LTD and he would smoke cigars and he loved blues and he loved Bob Seger. So most of my free time was hanging out, getting sick on cigars and listening to blues and Bob Seger. And, by the time I was 11, I probably could sing about everything Bob Seger ever did. I mean, that's just, I learned how to sing with him through Papa. And when I was with Dad, he didn't listen to anything but Roy Acuff and, the Stanley Brothers and that kind of stuff. So I got my bluegrass feel. And then my mom listened to the Statler Brothers. So I got my blend and my harmony and stuff for that. So it's a good mixture, but that's my biggest influence is that kind of stuff, which the Southern rock, I mean, who don't love Creedence? I mean, good God.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned a couple of bluegrass names. Are there any other bluegrass artists specifically that influenced you? In addition to the ones you mentioned, we could guess names like Bill Monroe, Flat, and Scruggs. Anyone else?
I mean, the Country Gentlemen and Seldom Seen and those guys, the original LRB and I've got to be friends with a lot of those guys, and that's amazing just to get to actually hang out and talk to some folks that you really look up to and admire and dig the way they do their music. And that's an awesome feeling. But yeah, I mean, those guys, I mean, Del McCurry, I mean, you know, there's a ton of them. I mean, Jimmy Martin was huge, and you know, Marty Stewart, of course. If you've never listened to Marty Stewart live at the Ryman, do yourself a favor. It's killer.
Yep. Noted.
All right. So I'm going to go back to this because I'm for some reason, you know, you've opened up the floodgates on the old recollections here. We grew up in the same place, a few years apart. I know you've called yourself a band geek growing up, so I know a lot of your influences come from a lot of places. Pike County, to me, was always a very weird musical mix. I grew up with hair bands and George Jones and Metallica and Ricky Skaggs. Was it the same for you? And what does that kind of eclectic mix do for your songwriting today?
Absolutely. It was identical to that. You know, I had one sister that wouldn't listen to anything but heavy metal, and I spent a lot of time with her, you know, but I mean, really, and this is what I tell everybody, you know, and I have people who come up to me all the time at shows and like, we don't listen to nothing in bluegrass. And I'm like, you know, you really should listen to other stuff. Give it a chance, you know, because to me, there's so much music out there, and there's a lot of time, and we can enjoy all of it. And if you're not, you're missing out, because every bit of it's got something to offer. I mean, and you never know, you get in my van, it may be on classical. It definitely be on turbo a lot, and octane, you know, that kind of deal. And you know, Ozzy's Boneyard, you know, the Boneyard and all that stuff. I mean, you know, I love that stuff. But then you can also get Willie's Roadhouse, you know, I mean, we've got it all programmed in. I mean, it's just constant mixture.
Oh, yeah. It's good stuff.
That's one of the nice things about satellite radio. I will attest to that. So you mentioned your papa. Are there any other family influences? Because everyone that we've talked to, or that I've heard from your part of the world, talks about parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc., being huge music influences. So is the Adkins clan a musical one?
You know, they're not. And it's sad. My dad couldn't play a radio. Honest to God, it was horrible.
I love it.
Oh, that's great. I mean, no, it's not.
He just couldn't. I mean, I had a cousin that was a lot older than me, and I called him my uncle. His name was Gurney Atkins, and he was left-handed. And he was one of the best left-handed fiddlers, banjo players, guitar players that I've ever heard. I learned 3 chords from him. And he had a stroke, and God love him, he passed away short after that. And everything else, I just kind of picked it up, you know. But he was the only one that I knew of that ever played anything. That was it. I did have a great-great-grandfather that was a bugler in the Civil War, but that's another story. But that's about as far as our musical talent goes in our family. It's really weird. It's sad.
You got more than your fair share of it, which is good. You're already, all these stories are making me miss home, Dave. Let's play another song as we step out for a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the bluegrass music scene. We're talking to Dave Adkins, and we're playing another cut from his new album, What I'm For. Here's Old Rooster. This is Roots Music Rambler.
Out in the barnyard, cackling for a country mile, shaking their tail feathers. Yeah, the hens are running wild. I might be an old rooster, but I ain't through the coop. Yeah, I might be an old rooster, but I can still cock-a-doodle-doo. They're scratching in the straw and picking on the ground, flocking all together and following me around. I might be an old rooster, but I'm still strutting around the coop. He goes through the day with a smile on his face. No, you'd never know how he's hurting. And when he's out working. But when he gets home with the curtains all shut, he swallows his pride as her memory shows up. The clock on the wall doesn't matter at all, 'cause he's got the proof in his eyes. It's 10:30, missing her time.
That's Tier 30 from Dave Adkins' new album, What I'm For. Love that one. Dave is here telling us more stories and such. We've got links to the album and Dave's website and all that good stuff in our show notes at rootsmusicrambler.com. You can also get directly to this episode if you go to rootsmusic.link/Dave Adkins. Dave, let's talk about the bluegrass scene a little bit. You're quite the notable guy in the genre. You've charted a number of songs and albums over the years. You've been nominated for a Grammy or two. You've been nominated for Male Vocalist of the Year somewhere along the way, and several other awards that are typically given to those kind of mainstay artists in a genre. But I'm curious what impact folks like Billy Strings and Molly Tuttle and some of these, I'll call them crossover artists, are having on bluegrass music these days. They seem to be getting more eyeballs from country and maybe Americana audiences. Is that a good thing? Is there a traditional versus modern rift in there, or is this just rising tides raise all ships?
Man, to me, I love it. I mean, anybody that's got a prominent banjo and 90% of their music and they're playing arenas, more power to them. I mean, that's I'm all about it. And I love Billy Strings, what he does. I love what Molly Tuttle does. They're way different than what I do, but I love them, and we listen to them, riding down the road. But you do have the traditionalists, and you've got hardcore traditionalists, and there isn't but maybe 5 or 6 of those first generations, or even half of that second generation that's around still. And what happens when they're gone? There's, what I mean? You still got the music, but there's nobody here to play it. I try to get them to see that side of it. Anything to live has to breathe, and music is the same way.
Well said. Well said. So speaking of the traditional versus modern, and you kind of touched on this, a lot of your songs do have a very traditional bluegrass sound. So would you consider yourself a traditional bluegrass artist? And maybe for the uninformed out there, what is the difference, or what are the differences between a traditionalist and, the modern bluegrass?
I guess I lean more. I mean, we do a lot of old country during our live stuff, and we even do some old Southern rock stuff, during our stuff. I guess I'm more of a traditionalist as far as the bluegrass I play is pretty hardcore bluegrass. It's just Jimmy Martin and that kind of stuff, and then stuff off my records. And some of it goes a little bit too far left from where I would listen to it, but that's the extreme stuff. But I don't know. I don't guess right now I don't guess there's a great big line in the sand or anything, but I love to see the success of what they're all having.
Yeah.
So I don't know,
Understandable.
traditionalist or modern, I don't know. I guess everybody's got their own opinion of where that line lays. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Absolutely.
Sure does. Well, I like the fact that you mix it up. I mean, your bluegrass stuff is pretty hardcore bluegrass, but like you said in your live shows, you're playing a bunch of stuff. I can hear some of that, sort of broadening, I guess, of the sound, if you will, on a lot of your cuts too. So I think
thank you.
I think that makes you more broadly accepted than the folks who are dyed in the wool. If this has got anything electric in it, it ain't bluegrass, which is, I've heard people say that before, which is fine. Wanted to ask you also too about music festivals. We've been kind of discussing and debating them a lot here on the show lately. It seems like 10 years ago, there were 6 or 8 good ones. And now it seems like there's 6 or 8 good ones a month across each genre. That's got to put more eyeballs and eardrums on bluegrass, doesn't it?
It does. Festivals is our livelihood. You've only got, a couple Billy Strings, Molly Tuttles, and the rest of us, we see each other every weekend somewhere, so many times a month. And yeah.
Okay. So is there anything in the industry right now that you'd love to see change or be different? From our perspective, it seems like a lot is going well for bluegrass artists right now, but obviously you're a lot closer to it than we are.
Yeah, I mean, everything seems to be going really, really great. I mean, there's a lot of Billy String supporters, and even the people that used to be pretty much traditionalists are even supporting him. I mean, how can you not,
Yeah.
But it seems like that Post Malone doing a country album, and I think Luke Combs has said he's going to do a bluegrass album. So, I mean, the more eyes it's on us, it can't do anything but help.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, I think one of the biggest things for the bluegrass genre, in my opinion, in probably the last 10 years, are Sturgill's bluegrass albums that he did during the pandemic, which opened up bluegrass music to a lot of other people. And I'll go back even a little bit further and say, when you've got, folks like Old Crow Medicine Show, which are, kind of going big mainstream with a song like Wagon Wheel, but then you buy their record and there's a bunch of really good old fashioned bluegrass songs on that. I mean, it seems like bluegrass has just been kind of growing a little bit more every year. And when these big mainstream, either country or pop or other Americana artists are doing either bluegrass covers or they're doing bluegrass songs themselves, now all of a sudden you're opening up the genre to a lot more people. And it just seems like everything keeps getting a little bit bigger every year, which has got to be good for everybody involved. So good stuff.
Yeah. And I hope the same thing, Jason. I really do. I hope that it just keeps continuing to grow. And this year we've had a lot of great attendance at festivals, and folks have been getting out and listening to music. And I'm like you, I just hope it keeps growing, and I hope it stays around a long time after I'm gone.
Well, I know one thing is for sure. Before you're gone, Dave Adkins is going to be in the middle of whatever happens, and we're all better for it. So, Dave, thanks so much for hanging out with us, man. We're excited about the new album. I can't wait to come see you live soon. I know I will. I'm just not sure when, but really appreciate you being here with us, man.
Hey, thank you all so much. And I appreciate y'all for having me on, and forgive me if I'm a little deadheaded, man. I had to work today, and I've been up since like 5 o'clock this morning. So I'm whooped, but thank y'all so much for having me, and God bless you. And I hope I get to see y'all soon. Let me know if you want to come to the show. You got tickets waiting on you.
Don't you worry. We will.
Oh, thank you.
He's Dave Adkins. The new album is What I'm For. Get out there and get a copy, listen, share it with a friend. Links to the album, Dave's website, and other resources can be found in our show notes at rootsmusicrambler.com or at rootsmusic.link/Dave Adkins. Let's hear one more cut from What I'm For as we go to break. This is She Put the Go in Gone. He's Dave Adkins, and this is Roots Music Rambler.
She put her toes in some high heels, put her heels in the drive, put that boy in his place there, with that leaving look in her eyes, put his heart in the rear view, put the car in gear, put the wheels in motion, put the out and boy I'm out of here. She put the going gone, the sewing so long, the wind blowing through her pretty blonde hair. Saw the good in goodbye and didn't even cry when she put the done in his last done her wrong. She put the going gone. She puts her phone on silent, leaves him in the bed he made. He's putting tears
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. How about that, Dave Adkins? Good stuff. And I'm telling you, man, like, I want to say all but maybe one of his albums in the last like 10 years has charted on the bluegrass charts. I mean, the guy's
That's
like
awesome.
he's mainstay artist in the bluegrass genre and has a beautiful voice, as you probably heard from some of the songs we played. So glad to have him on the show. And I'm really super happy to confirm that he got his start in front of my house. So that was kind of cool.
are such a big part of his success.
Oh yeah, I had everything to do with it. I had absolutely nothing to do with it at all. But it was cool that I got to see him when he first started out. So I vaguely I remember a bluegrass band playing on the parade float in front of my house. I don't remember specifically him or the people that were a part of it. Mother has kind of retrospectively said, oh, but no, that was Dave Adkins and his first band when they were in high school. Then, oh, okay, cool. Now I make the connection. So good stuff. But there you go.
All right.
And thank you for humoring me with my Pike County stories and stuff like that. So,
oh, I mean, they're just priceless.
Aren't they though? I love that. What was he talking about? His dad couldn't play the radio and his granddad couldn't hear thunder. Those are good phrases. Those are good Pike County phrases.
Yes, I should write those down so I remember. Oh man, my dad couldn't play the radio. I'm like, oh my God, yes, I know what you mean.
I'll very quickly tell you my favorite one. I had a science teacher in 8th grade, and the science lab was in the middle of the school, so there were no windows. There was hallways on either side, and the lab was in the middle. And the air went out one day, and it was really hot, and so she would open. She had doors that went out to each hallway. So she opened both doors and had fans that were pulling air in. So she's out in the hallway, kind of watching the kids go to class, and the bell rings, and we're supposed to all be in the room. And so she waits till the bell rings, and she comes in and she's fanning herself. And this is a good old mountain country woman, right? Mm-hmm. She just happens to be my science teacher. And she comes in fanning herself, and without thinking, she goes, "Whoa, I'm hotter than a jacked off tomcat." And we all were like, what? Oh my
Did
God.
She just say that?
And she realized what she said and was like, oh, forget you heard that.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So yeah. Not one I'd heard before.
That was a good one.
But that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I will do her the justice of not telling people what her name was, but that was fun. That was a good time. All right, it's time for our Pickin the Grinnin segment here on the old program. This is where Frank and I tell you who we've been listening to recently. It's our picks for who's making us grin, and it's recommendations for you to go out and maybe listen to them and do some grinning of your own self, person's stuff. And it might be an album, might be a song, might be an artist, usually an artist. Whatever it is, might be old, might be new, might be borrowed, might be blue, but it'll sure be good. And so, Frank, I'm going to go first this week. I'm going to do you the honors of going first because I know how you love it when I throw you under the bus. So
I'm actually ready.
Well, okay, you go first then. I'll save mine to the end.
No. Save the best for last.
Okay, fine. All right.
Ahead.
So I don't think I have gratuitously fanboyed Brent Cobb on this show as much as I am a gratuitous fanboy of Brent Cobb. I love Brent Cobb. He's not my Pickin the Grinnin. He's known and established, and we've talked about him before. But there is a new artist very similar to Brent Cobb coming out of Georgia named Ben Chapman. And I've been seeing some of his TikToks, and he's got a new album, and he sounds an awful lot like Brent vocally, but he also has that sort of Georgia country mixed with a little soul and funk and just kind of really cool songs. And so Ben Chapman is my Pickin the Grinnin this week because he reminds me a lot of Brent Cobb, and I love me some Brent Cobb. So even if he winds up just being a knockoff Brent Cobb, that's good enough for me because what I've seen so far, he's going to be way more than a knockoff. He's a real talented kid and sounds great. So Ben Chapman, will make sure we have links to him and his stuff in the old show notes, and we'll have links to whatever it is that Frank's about to bestow upon us as her Pickin the Grinnin this week.
So we talked about the Evanston Folk Festival, and I've been to another festival in the meantime. I'm in a very advantageous position here. I have lots of artists to choose from for my Pickin the Grinnin. And the first one that I would like to highlight is a young man named John Mook. Okay. The last name is spelled M-U-Q. And when I saw his name on the lineup for Evanston Folk Fest, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't think much, I didn't really look him up, or I'd never heard it. So I'm like, oh, okay. But we caught his set, and I'm so glad that we did because he is fantastic. And just so, what's the word I'm looking for? Like charismatic. So John is originally from Uganda and he's now lives in Austin, Texas, and, doing the whole folk Americana thing. And he played the Evanston Folk Fest. It was just him and his guitar. So we were really able to hear his voice and his stories. He's told a lot of stories about growing up in Uganda and going to British school there. And it was just fascinating. The whole thing was just fascinating. I could have sat there and listened to him talk for like another couple of hours, but his songs were just very upbeat and cheery. And he was just so positive. It was hard to not smile while we sat and listened and watched him. So I hope to see more of John Mook and hear more of him. I've been following him on the socials and hoping to see that he comes back this way, because I would really, really like to see him as like a headliner.
Sweet. Well, let's get him on the show. That sounds.
Oh my goodness.
He's got to have an interesting story. So
for sure.
That's excellent. John Mook. All right. I got it on the old Spotify, following him now. I'm going to have to go listen to him. So
cool.
The last person that I listened to who had a direct sort of African roots is Joy Oladekoun, who's my favorite artist. So This is promising. I'm looking forward to getting into old John Mook. Sounds good.
All right.
Sweet. Well, that was good. That was a good pick. A couple of good picks there for folks out there. Very good.
Yeah.
Real quickly, my son, Grant, he came up to Chicago. He was in Chicago a couple of days ago to see a rap show somewhere. I don't know. He told me where, but I don't remember where it was. But he went up there specifically to see an artist named My Name Isn't J-Mac. That's the artist's name. His name, his stage name is, quote, My Name Isn't J-Mac. For the already rap initiated, you're going to know who I'm talking about. For those of you who aren't rap initiated like me, I have no clue. I've never heard anything that this kid's ever done. But so Grant goes to this show. He's like the second or third artist on a 4 or 5 artist bill. And Grant gets there early and he's on the rail. Well, as this guy who's apparently not named J-Mac, as he's rapping, he looks out and sees Grant like rapping all the lyrics along, singing along, because Grant knows all the lyrics to all his songs.
Sure.
So this guy like points to Grant in the crowd and like they make some sort of connection. Well, after the show, Grant's outside of the venue and he comes out and hangs out and chats with Grant for like a half an hour. And so Grant makes this new buddies with this My Name Isn't J-Mac character.
Oh, that is so nice.
And so I was like, well, that's really cool. Like Grant was like, yeah, we talked about music and we talked about this, and he's originally from Virginia and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, well, that's really cool, man. And then I look at this guy on Spotify, 1.3 million monthly listeners. So apparently he's bigger.
That's astronomical.
He's bigger than I thought he was, not ever having heard of him. But yeah, good stuff. He's got apparently a song that has 30 million listens or streams on the old Spotify too. So that was pretty cool. Wow. I thought that was just kind of neat. Not necessarily the music we cover, but it's cool that my son got to hang out with one of his favorite artists, which was sweet.
Anytime a fan gets to make that sort of a connection with an artist, it's just so like memorable and it's special. So good for Grant.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, cool. Here in a couple of weeks, he and I are going to be sitting front row for Marcus King. So it'll be
your favorite.
It'll be our second interaction up close and personal with Mr. King. So I'm hoping he remembers it. He won't remember us, but maybe he will. Who knows?
I don't know. You are a pretty memorable dude there, JJ Jam.
Well, I also have a new shirt that I'm going to wear for the Marcus King show, and Katie has a matching shirt.
Oh,
so
boy.
Me, Grant, and Katie and Karen are all going to go. And I think Katie and I are going to wear our match. We have shirts that have cats playing banjos on them. And so I think we're going to wear those so that he looks down and is like, who the fuck is this character? But we'll see. I don't know. It'll be fun. Roots Music Rambler is a production of Falls and Partners, copyright 2024. Our theme music is Sheepskin and Beeswax by Gentacorum. Join us online at rootsmusicrambler.com. Make sure you mash that subscribe or follow button so you remember to join us for the next Hoe-Down and Throwdown. She's Frank.
He's Falls.
And whatever you do, kids, ramble on.